Today's Isorropia Live. My name's Neil.
I'm Noami.
How's everyone doing today? This is a public live, so if your names will come up on our comments boards, we'll refer to you as from your first name. Okay, just need to make you aware of that. So today's subject, we're going to be talking about the kind of quite heavy topic of depression. Okay, so we're going to try and make it as light as possible, as fun as possible, and hopefully we're going to give you some really good tips and tools and skills how to deal with depression if you feel that you are exhibiting any depressive symptoms. Okay, so yeah, well, I think we will crack straight into it. So we've formulated a number of questions, okay, that we've been kind of talking about in the office. And we thought we're going to try and make this as kind of simple as possible because depression is such a massive subject and you can go really deep into it. And we thought that perhaps isn't the most appropriate thing to do in an hour's live. So we're going to just try to make it, as I said, simple and as light as possible. Okay. So we're going to go straight into, just give us a shout, by the way, if you are there. We can't see any comments coming up. Usually we get like a hi guys or whatever, but feel free to comment. All right. And we'll try and get through as many comments as we possibly can. If you've got any questions, then fire away. We'll try to get through all the comments, but quite often in these situations, in these lives, we can't get through all of them. Okay, so we're going to go straight into the first question. Simply is, what is depression? I say simply, it's quite weird really, because we've been asking this, we've been talking about this in the office.
Yeah.
And depression can mean different things to all sorts of persons. You say to one person, what does it mean? They give you a different answer to the next person.
It's a really grey area, isn't it?
It is, very much so. But one thing for sure, though, depression is more than just simply being feeling unhappy or sad for a few days. Okay, really, for me, that's like low moods. All right. Most people go through periods of that. They go through periods of feeling down. But when you're depressed, you feel persistently sad or in a low mood state for weeks, sometimes even months, sometimes years. Okay, that to me is the difference between low mood, sadness, and depression. It's the length of time. It's that you're persistently having these feelings. You're persistently feeling sadness, low mood for weeks, months, years. Okay, and of course, some people view depression as kind of quite trivial and not a genuine health condition, health concern. But I'm telling you now, guys, they're wrong. Okay, they're just certainly wrong, and I know that through first hand. All right, it's a real illness, real symptoms. It's not a sign of weakness, and you can't just snap out of it. You hear people saying, "Paul, you just need to pull yourself together." It's not the case, all right? And I think most of us at Isorropia have experienced this and understand this. All right, they're just so wrong. All right. So depression really kind of massively stops you engaging in everyday tasks that benefit you or that you need to do, just normal everyday tasks, things like work. People that exhibit depression symptoms often have time off work because they can't cope with work. It's like communicating to friends, family, colleagues, asserting your needs, so communicating to health professionals or when you're buying things.
It can affect all parts of your life, can't it?
Literally
every part of your life.
Yeah, yes, looking after yourself, looking after other people, financial matters. It can completely, exhibit you keeping on top of finances and things. And people get into serious trouble, don't they, when they're depressed? They get into debt and things.
Burying your head in the sand and not being able to cope with things, and it affects every area, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Socializing's another one. You people just don't feel like going out and getting that basic connection that you need. And basic needs as well, like exercise or activity, eating properly, sleeping patterns, things like that. Hobbies and interests. You're totally disengaged in the things that bring you kind of enjoyment. Even to the extreme, like leaving your house. to that extreme. If you've got extreme depression, leaving your house becomes so much more difficult.
Yeah.
All of these things, everything in your life becomes so much harder to deal with when you're depressed. And you know what? It's something I've certainly felt in my past when I was in my deep period of depression. I wouldn't leave the house, just totally avoiding, isolating everyone. Phone went, ignored it. Letters came through the post, ignored it. Knock on the door, ignored it. So it is real. You can't just pull yourself together. It's not about that whatsoever. And it can be very, very serious. But the good news is, guys, and I think everyone who works at Isorropia are living proof of this. Proof's in the pudding. Good news is, with the right treatment, the right support, the right people around you, most people who have had depression can make a full recovery. And we're going to talk about a lot of tips and skills later on in life in about 10, 15 minutes about what you can do to speed up the process of, kind of moving through depression and coming out the other side.
So going back to depression, it looks different for everybody. Like for me personally, my depression it feels quite physical. Like after like a long period of time, like for me it comes in waves. And when I'm in like the midst of my wave, when I'm feeling really, really thick in the depression, it feels like heavy. It feels like armor. It feels like I'm wearing like heavy armor and a heavy helmet, and it just feels like I just feel really, really heavy, like physically really heavy, and it feels like I'm commando crawling, like emotionally through every day. So it can be really, really debilitating.
That's a really, really good way of saying it. It's like you're wearing a suit of armor, isn't it?
How it feels for
Not
me,
just mentally, but also physically, because you kind of like get all of those symptoms of physical pains and stuff like that, which again we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll go on to the next question, which is, what causes depression? So, again, just a massive topic to talk about. You could probably sit here for hours talking about what causes depression.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep it, short, simple, sweet. And really, there's a trigger for depression. So you can have those life-changing events, such as maybe like bereavements or losing a job, maybe, and giving birth as well. We were talking about that, weren't we?
Massive hormonal changes for women, especially with postnatal depression and things like that. That can spur on depression. That can be ongoing, and a lot of the time as well with postnatal depression, it can be left untreated because we can just feel like maybe it's just the baby blues, or just sort of feeling a bit low. But it can actually be left untreated for long periods of time, which can cause major depression.
Absolutely, yeah. Family history as well. I mean, as of yet, there is no depressive gene that's been discovered as of yet. All right. However, if you've got a family history of depression, you're more likely to experience it yourself. So there's definitely some link there, but there's no evidence to say that there's a depressive gene or anything like that. Yeah, but for some people, like upsetting, stressful events, as I said, like bereavement, divorce, illness, redundancy, job worries, debts, things like that can all cause depression. But I think, all of these different causes, it's a combination of them all. It's a combination. It's like layers on layer on layer of unhealthy or negative experiences, traumatic experiences. For example, you might be feeling very low after being ill, right? And then all of a sudden you've had a traumatic experience. It might be a relationship breakup, or loss of a job after being ill, bereavement or something. It's like a layer on layer on layer of these horrible things happening to us, which happen all the time in life, that you can then end up, before you know it, exhibiting depressive symptoms. So people often talk about that spiral downwards, don't they?
Yeah.
The spiral downwards of events that lead to depression. So again, another example might be, your relationship breaks down, you're feeling very low, okay, and you might end up isolating yourself. You might end up stopping seeing friends, family, that connection, and you know that's something I've experienced personally. It's pretty much exactly the same thing, and I know other guys and other people have as well. Some of my mates have been through this, and you know they've lost jobs, and you've had all that time on your hands, and perhaps they've started drinking more and things like that. All of this can make you feel worse, and then just trigger the depression.
It's
Right?
our comfort zones, isn't it? I think when we're in our comfort zones and when we're really, really low in mood, and especially experiencing a lot of anxiety as well, our comfort zones tend to just get smaller and smaller and smaller to a point where it's just one room, which can be completely, toxic and debilitating, and can make depression so much worse.
Well, you become vulnerable, don't you? You become
Definitely.
vulnerable when you have traumatic like events happen to you, negative experiences, things, and you become vulnerable to your own thoughts. So what tends to happen is that people will just, as you said, shrink down their comfort zone. It's like a protection mechanism, defense mechanism.
Definitely.
Shrink it all down to something that they think that they can manage, which is generally you in a room or in a flat, avoiding the whole world. But you know that's an incredibly and unhealthy way to deal with it, isn't it? But people don't know that they're doing that.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
People are they're in it
Unaware.
before they know it,
Yeah.
and then they can't get out of it.
I think another thing, massive thing for what causes depression is inevitably when you're in that comfort zone and it's so small. I think it's a lack of hope and a lack of purpose. I think that's something that a lot of people have mentioned. I know I felt like that definitely was a lack of hope and a lack of that things just aren't going to get better. So I think it's going to be really important actually when we start going through some of the tools and things like that. We're going to hopefully be able to show you some tools that you can use to be able to sort of come out of that, and show you that there is a way of coming out, and that there is hope. There is hope to come out of depression.
Absolutely. I just want to mention that we can't see any comments. Is anyone commenting to us? It might be an internet thing. We see that we've got some people joining in, engaging with us today, which is great. If anyone, if somebody can send us a comment, that would be great. Just hi, how you doing, or whatever. Here we go. No comments on that. Right. Okay. So other studies have suggested that you're more likely to get depression as you get older. So, which there's definitely a link there, and that it's more common for people. Depression is more common for people who live in difficult social and economic conditions. So there's a societal link nowadays. There's a societal link to depression. Okay, so people living in poverty, for example, or people living in isolated communities. You may have, moved to a community for a job, and you found that it's very isolating. Or people who haven't got jobs, unemployed people, or no meaning and purpose in their lives, they're more than likely to go through depression symptoms. So should we go through just a few of these kind of stressful events that people regularly go through, which can cause cause depression, and we'll talk a little bit about your routes into depression, because there's various ways that you can kind of enter kind of that kind of world. As we talked a little bit about family history before, and this is kind of like a biological route into depression. All right, as I said, there's no depressive gene been discovered, but if you've got a history of depression in your family, you're more likely going to kind of exhibit the same kind of thing. So there's a biological route, and we talked a little bit about giving birth, didn't we?
Yeah.
Which again is a biological route into depression. So the hormonal changes and the physical changes through going through childbirth, and also kind of the responsibility of bringing a new life in the world, but the changes in the body and the brain that women go through childbirth can be a biological route into depression. Okay, now how about personality? You may be more vulnerable to depression if you have certain personality traits. So if you're suffering from low self-esteem, for example, or you're overly critical on yourself, or perhaps you are taking a perfectionist point of view, and life's not living up to your kind of expectations. Prone to anxieties, stress, not coping with stress very well. And we're talking about a psychological route into depression. So we've got biological routes, we've got psychological routes, and we've also got a sociological route. Okay, so perhaps loneliness You know, feelings of loneliness caused by things like being cut off from your family. I mentioned earlier on, you might move into an isolated community. You're not contacting many people, or you know, you find a lot of older guys now, old age pensioners. That, you know, their wives have unfortunately, or their wives and husbands have unfortunately passed away. They haven't got any family.
I think
loneliness massively increases your route into depression.
I think being alone is something massive. I think, but also I think I personally, when I was in the thick of it, I felt alone because I don't feel understood. I don't feel like anyone understood what I was feeling. I felt like nobody really kind of got my sort of my struggle. Nobody really understood that, and I felt more alone because of that. And when I did reach out to some of the people closer to me, they didn't understand. They felt quite angry. I think they expressed being quite angry towards me because they were frustrated. They sort of didn't understand it, which made me feel more alone in the process. So sometimes we can feel alone through things like that, like Neil said, and also because people were not being understood by other people. And I think that's, for me, being understood was so important and actually really key to me actually feeling better and getting better. Yeah. Being understood.
Yeah. So I want to allude to some comments. So we've got a few people saying hi. So I just want to say hi to Sarah and Anthony. And Anthony brings up a brilliant point, and I have experienced this as well myself. Okay, after my partner gave birth to my first child, she got quite poorly, and I found myself doing all the physical stuff. So I became very exhausted, and I started getting quite down. And Anthony says childbirth is mad. I had depression after my partner gave birth, and I didn't know men could get postnatal depression. But there's a really, really good point there. We do not, as a society, does not consider the man in childbirth at all. And I did a course, and some amazing statistic, like 11% of men or something. I can't remember the statistic, but it was quite significant. 11% of men after their wives give birth get postnatal depression.
I think if it's really, really traumatic as well, like the whole experience, I think it's actually quite common. I think, well, not really common, but it's something that happens. Some men actually get PTSD from the traumatic experience that they've sort of endured with their partner. So it is actually does really, really affect men as well. And I think we've sort of missed that out actually.
We do. Definitely. Society doesn't kind of look at that point. So Anthony, brilliant point. Thanks so much for bringing that up and sharing you know, your experience with that. It's a real thing, and it goes on out there. Anthony just replied, I think it was the huge life change and acceptance of it. Definitely. Absolutely. The responsibility that we have as new parents, especially young parents.
Yeah, I was 18 when I had my eldest, and it was literally just like I just had no idea what I was doing. It was just a massive, huge change, and I lost a lot of friends as well actually at the beginning because I was so young. They're all going off to university or going out on nights out, and I couldn't go. So it was actually really quite. So that I was struggling with a lot of loss as well of people and sort of like my old life, and yeah, it was a huge, big thing to get your head around, especially at a young age. But for anybody at any age, really, it is a big thing.
So I just want to come back to later. There's essentially 3 routes into depression. Okay, and that's the biological, the psychological, and the sociological routes into depression. What about lack of awareness? We were talking about that, weren't we?
Massively. Lack of awareness is huge. Like you need, I think being aware that you can change how you feel by changing your thoughts is massive. Like, because I wasn't aware of that for a long, long time. I just wasn't aware that I could change how I was feeling by changing my mindset and my thoughts. And when I did realize that, and I started putting those things into action, and started realizing actually I'm feeling a little bit better. Like this is actually really, really helping. And it was just massive. And just the awareness alone of just being aware that you can change your thoughts, which can change your feelings, is huge. It's really, really big.
Absolutely. Awareness. So once you understand it, you can do something about it. And it's hopefully it's something that we're bringing, isn't it? Isorropia is bringing to some of our guys. You know, that's the plan. It's the awareness. It's the education. It's, you know, identifying that you have depression, or borderline in perhaps having depression, and as quick as you understand it, you can do something about it.
Exactly.
Then, you know, and understanding things like that it's temporary, or it might be a long-term temporary thing, but it understanding all of that,
definitely that it's temporary really helps me. I think for me with my depression, everyone's I think it's important to say everyone's depression's different. I think for me personally, it comes in waves. It's just like 1 minute, so it can sort of go like over like a period of about a week to 2 weeks, and I can feel it coming on. I'm like, right, okay, this is another wave, here we go. But just being aware that it's temporary is really important, because it's sort of like, you know what, this isn't going to last forever. I'm not going to feel this rubbish forever. And it's sort of being able to figure out how you work. And so I sort of know that it's going to be okay. In about a week or two, this is going to pass. And it might come again, but I'm sort of learning how to manage it each time it comes along, a little bit better, which is really important.
And I think it's having that awareness as well, that, you know, once you kind of understand it, you can say that that's not me. The depression is different to who I am. That is depression. That isn't me. That is depression. That's that feeling of depression. You know, it's something separate to me, just like feeling happy, just like feeling, you know, sad or guilty or whatever emotions that we have. You can kind of separate it, segregate it once you know what it is and how to deal with it.
It's about not owning that as well, isn't it? It's about it's about feeling the emotion, not being the emotion. You are able to feel an emotion and then feel that emotion, then let it pass and then let it go. You don't have to become the emotion. It's like some people say, I have anxiety. For me, that's it's difficult, because I think they should say, I'm feeling anxious, because if you say I have anxiety, it's kind of like you're owning it. It's sort of like giving it, you're giving yourself, I have this. And everybody will experience that and everyone will feel that, but it's not something that you have. Instead of saying that, being careful about how you're wording things and owning things for yourself, I think is actually, that's important as well.
So let's move on to that then. Let's move on to how can you tell if you have depression, Noami? Should we do that? Yeah. So it impacts people in different ways, and there's a wide variety of symptoms, as we've kind of discussed. They kind of range from lasting feelings of unhappiness and hopelessness. You brought that up earlier. It's a great point. Hopelessness, to losing interest in the things that you might have used to enjoyed, feeling very tearful, and also many people who have depression also have symptoms of anxiety. They kind of go hand in hand. Okay. There's also physical symptoms of depression, isn't there? Which is mad if you think about it. There's actually physical, you know, like consequences to depression.
Like I was saying earlier with the armor thing. I physically feel that. I can actually feel how really heavy when I'm in the thick of it. It's just like so like it's crazy. Well, I really feel that.
I remember having like really intense aches and pains through my body. Just randomly appearing, you know, in my legs, in my feet. So
it's crazy though, isn't it? How it's sort of like our bodies are sort of trying to tell us that as well, coming out physically in physical symptoms. It's interesting.
And so obviously they, you know, the symptoms range from mild to severe. And the mildest, it could be that you're feeling persistently low, as we said. To the extreme, it might feel like, you know, people feel this all the time, that they don't want to be here. Okay, it might lead to feeling suicidal, or life's not worth living any longer, you know. But most people experience feelings of stress, anxiety, low moods, you know, during those difficult times. However, low moods, I just want to reiterate this, low moods will improve after a short amount of time. Okay, rather than being the, you know, the signs of depression. There's the difference between low moods and depression. It's kind of the length of time and how much it kind of stops you from doing things, I would personally say. So for all those people who might be thinking, you know, who are listening to this, might be thinking, am I depressed? Am I not depressed? There are things that you can look out for. Okay, there are symptoms that you can look out for, and really it's a combination as well of these symptoms. So you can ask yourself so a series of questions, you know, do I have little or no enjoyment? Do you have trouble with ruminating thoughts, you know, especially at night time? Have you got low energy or no energy at all? You know, do you feel that you're letting people down or putting yourself down? So if there's a combination of these things, ask yourself those questions, then you might actually help you to kind of realize that, yeah, you are actually feeling having feelings of depression. For me, it took me years to actually understand that I have these feelings of depression, and then took me years to actually admit it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I went into denial for years. Now there's nothing wrong with me, you know, or secretly, you know, embarrassed about it, don't want to go to a doctor, don't want to talk about it. So, you know, however, if you're wondering, you know, you're not quite sure if you have, just ask yourself some of those simple questions, and it might just give yourself some clarity on what you're wondering.
Another one for me was wanting to sleep all the time. I wanted to sleep all the time. Like I just wanted to shut off. I didn't want to be, you know, in reality, and just wanting to sleep all the time, constantly, every chance that you get. I think that's another big sign for depression. And the main thing that I sort of get the thing of is people say lack of enjoyment in things they used to enjoy. I think that was one of the biggest ones that I've heard the most. And there's definitely one for me that I definitely struggled with. Losing that lack of enjoyment for things that I really used to enjoy. I just didn't enjoy it anymore. I just didn't have that fire for it anymore. Didn't have that passion for it anymore. It just was gone.
Yeah.
And it can be so frustrating and infuriating. I think infuriating when you don't enjoy those things anymore, and you really want to enjoy them, but it's just not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to allude to a comment Kirsty's put. I think she was applying to what you were saying about language and stuff like that. Language change is a real life changer. Yeah, absolutely. So I think she was applying to what you were saying about, you know, how you perceive, you know, mental well-being issues, you know, owning it or not owning it, and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's really, really important. It is important because it's just those little things like that. It changes our whole mindset. If you say something in a certain way, if you can reframe it into a more positive way of saying something, where it's less like you're owning something negative, it is going to have an impact on your mental health. It's going to have an impact on the way you see things as well.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Well, I just want to lead to the next question, and really, we were talking about yesterday. We were talking about on this live on this live, if there are people wondering whether they have depression or not. Okay, so we were kind of throwing some questions around that sort of topic. The next question is when to see a doctor. When do I know that it's the right time to see a doctor? And there's a very simple answer to this. The sooner that you see a doctor, the sooner you can kind of get on the road to recovery, essentially. And I know it's really difficult. You know, as I said, it took me years to go and see a doctor because I went into that big denial stuff and I felt embarrassed about it. I didn't want to burden anyone and all that sort of stuff, right? Many people wait a long time, don't they, before they do anything about it?
They do. And I think for me, when I went to my doctor, when I finally got to the point where I was like, right, I need to do something about this, I think it's important to remember when you do go to your doctor to remember that you're in control and you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. And with my doctor, he told me that I was depressed, and he gave me some medication and said, this is your medication, this is what you need to do. And personally, for me, I didn't want to take that medication. I felt like I needed support around what I was feeling and thinking, and I needed to talk to somebody. But unfortunately, I didn't get that support, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I think this is really, really important. This is what I would have needed back then, definitely, and would have helped me a lot, but I didn't get that.
Absolutely.
So it's important to remember when you do go to a doctor that you're in control, you get to choose.
Yeah.
You get to choose what you want to do. You can take medication if you want to. And it's also important to sort of check in as well. If that medication isn't working for you, if you feel like it's not helping, going back and say this isn't helping, and sort of like, you know, you get to be in control of what's going on.
Medication is trial and error at the end of the day, isn't it?
It is.
So right, okay, this brings us to the second half of this live, which is all about really how to live with depression, how to treat depression, and what you can do about it. So the next question is how to live living with depression. And there's three really I just want to discuss three incredibly important and beneficial points that you can kind of be aware of when you're living with depression. Okay, the first one is about lifestyle changes. Okay, many people with depression benefit from making small lifestyle changes, and it's something that you know, I've kind of seen for myself. So you know, things, just simple things like getting more activity, cutting down on perhaps the kind of more kind of toxic things we do, such as drinking, smoking, eating more appropriately, just so making these small little tweaks. If you're not going out at all and you're feeling depressed, then perhaps, one small thing you can just build up to is just perhaps just going out for a walk once a day, or perhaps it's just making a little tweak within your diet, and trying to cut out some of all the sugar and the processed foods and stuff. You'll find that it makes a massive difference to depressive symptoms.
I think it's motivation sometimes, isn't it, that we struggle with living with depression. Motivation is something that I really struggle with. I know a lot of other people do as well. And sometimes that motivation just isn't there. It's not going to be there, no matter how much we want it to be there. Sometimes it's just not there. So when the motivation isn't there, discipline needs to kick in. Discipline's really important, and routine. So if you have a routine and it's sort of set out throughout the day, and you're like, right, at this time I'm going to do this, at this time I'm going to do that, even if it's one or two things throughout the day, that routine's really going to help you to be able to move forward and start sort of like coming out of your comfort zone and hitting those goals that you want to hit in the day. So when that motivation is lacking, discipline needs to step in. It's almost like being your own parent. I think we said that a few times. Being your own parent, I think it's crucial. When you're really, really struggling, it's sort of about going, right, get up, do this, do that, get it done, and then you can sit back down again, and just sort of getting those core needs met when it's really at baseline.
Absolutely. And I had a really good kind of skill, I guess you call it, thing to do when you're not being motivated, and it's just trying to bring your thoughts back to 2 minutes. Just think about the next 2 minutes. Right. And then when you've done those 2 minutes, just think about the next 2 minutes. Just bring everything down, just simple, everything back down small. It might just motivate you enough to get your shoes on. And if you got your shoes on, it's sending signals to your brain that you need to be somewhere, you need to be doing something, you need to go out, and then focus on the next 2 minutes. It might just be the door. You might just be looking at the door for the next 2 minutes. It's like, just get out, just go out, just get out, just that 2 minutes. And it might just, bring everything down to small, really tiny chunks. And you're more likely to be motivated when you're breaking it down that small than thinking of the whole picture, which might just go the opposite way and just completely demotivate you.
Anthony said trying to practice this at the moment. So many things in the day though. So yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? It's trying to sort of have that sort of routine and trying to fit everything in. Planning is a really good thing to do, sort of planning out, and then also giving yourself a break. Like sometimes you're not going to be able to do everything that's on that list, and that's okay, and you can sort of push it through to the next day. It's about being kind to yourself as well as trying to really push yourself at the same time.
And once we start down that road of making these small changes, I can guarantee you it'll get easier. The more you do it, it's like forming these healthy habits, or replacing healthy habits with unhealthier ones. The more you do it, like sort of 3 or 4 weeks of really pushing yourself using these motivational discipline techniques, and after a month you find that it starts to become a bit more second nature, and you just find it, your brain just kicks in and it becomes the familiar, and it's not so difficult. You're not fighting against it all the time. So it's the first sort of like month which is the hardest bit. So look, that is lifestyle changes, and we're just talking about small, tiny little tweaks within yourself. Number 2, we talked a lot about educating yourself. Educating yourself is huge. So I don't know, self-help books, videos on YouTube, whatever it might be. I know a lot of the guys at Isorropia, before Isorropia started, they did kind of like level 2 and 3 mental health courses, or CBT courses, or inner child healing, stuff like that. Not to get qualified and get jobs, but to actually kind of learn about it themselves and help themselves. And as like the sort of bonus, they got jobs out of it by being qualified. So we don't have to go to that extreme.
Staying open-minded is really important as well, I think, with things like that, with how to treat depression. I think some of us can sort of get stuck in a way of thinking, oh no, that's not going to work for me, I'm not going to be able to do that, or that's not going to work, I'm not that sort of person. So it really is about staying open-minded, because some things you just never know that they might work, and it's worth giving a go.
And what about the third point then of this, how to live with depression?
talk to people, definitely a trusted person or a trusted friend or anybody that you feel comfortable talking to, really. It's really, really important that you just talk about how you're feeling. Give them a ring, say, do you know what, I'm actually really struggling today with this, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, and yeah, I really want to talk about it. Talking is so important, it's massive.
Absolutely. So we've got lifestyle changes, we've got educating yourself, and we've got talking about it. Okay, for me they're critical, and I wish I'd done more of it when I was there in that place. So how do we treat depression? It involves a combination of kind of what we just talked about: lifestyle changes, talking therapies, medicine. Okay, so you know, talking therapies such as CBT. You don't have to. You can do them online now, can't you? You can get free CBT courses, often used for like mild depression. You know, and severe depression, it's kind of like more of a combination of those things. You know, the medication, the talking therapies, you know, and the self-help stuff, the education, the lifestyle changes, and whatnot. However, for me, recovery, for me, and I know for yourself, Naomi, and most of the guys here at Isorropia, it's all starts by trying to kind of understand your thoughts and behaviors and how they impact you. Once we understand our thoughts and feelings, we can change them. We can do something about them. It's all about recognizing things like the events in your past that have kind of shaped your belief system. So your belief system about your beliefs of who you are, the world around you, and what you're doing in the world. You know, that's all shaped through our past experiences. And if they've been quite traumatic and quite negative, quite unhealthy, then it's no wonder that we're going to form these unhealthy beliefs about ourselves and the world around us. So it's all about understanding where that's come from, and recognizing it. You can do something about it, but really it's about focusing. It's a part of that, and mostly focusing on how you can change the way you think in the here and now, being in the present. It's trying to bring everything back to the present and being in the here and now. That's where you can come up with the solutions and start tackling your thought processes and how to kind of change your thoughts, which will change your feelings, which will eventually change your behavior. So to do that, we need to overcome negative thoughts or ruminating thoughts. Okay, so those thoughts, you know, perhaps like we need to learn how to challenge our thoughts of helplessness, things like that. Okay, so and to do that, we've got a handy little guide, okay, which we're just going to run through just for 10 minutes about how we can combat our negative thinking or our ruminating thoughts. Sorry,
I just want to say one other thing as well. I think with how going on how to treat depression, I think another part of just healing, just in general, our emotions and things that we've been through and what we're feeling, we tend to be trying to run away from it a lot of the time by using unhealthy coping mechanisms and sort of like really trying to run from our emotions because we don't want to feel them. And I think it's really, really important to say that crying and feeling that emotion is so important. And I realized that in lockdown. I got to the point where I had to feel those emotions and those feelings. I couldn't run away from them anymore. I couldn't work. I couldn't like go and see friends. I couldn't run away from myself anymore. And I had to kind of just sit there and feel it. And it was so uncomfortable, actually. It was really, really hard. And I cried a lot. But it really, really helped. Like just after just crying for about half an hour, I felt so much better because I'd actually felt it. I hadn't been running from it. You know, I actually just felt it for a minute and just thought, you know what, and just let myself feel it. Which was just a really big, it's a huge thing to do, actually, just to let yourself feel that emotion. But it's a massive part of healing and getting better and moving forwards and just going through that emotion, letting yourself go through that emotion and letting that go and moving on from that. It's a really big part of healing, I think.
Absolutely. And of course, that's just a great thing to say. You know, this is what we're trying to do, guys. It's about healing. It's not about fixing. It's not about really kind of, you know, getting better as such, is it? It's about healing yourself. It's about healing from the experiences that you've been through. Definitely. Okay, so we're going to go to this guide about, you know, there's 7 questions really to identify yourself. You might want to get a pen and write some of this down. We're going to talk through them, spend about 10 minutes or so. And it's about trying to kind of ask yourselves these questions in the moment. Okay, so I'm just going to start. There's 7 points we're going to talk about just for sort of like 10 minutes or so. The first one is when you are, this is all about when you're negatively thinking or ruminating about thoughts. How can we stop that? Ask yourself, are these thoughts useful? If you can, in the moment, just try to ask, hang on a minute, stop. Are these thoughts useful? Are they serving you? If they're not, then you've kind of identified that you need to try to change what you're thinking. Okay. Ask yourself, can these thoughts that you're thinking about be used to benefit you, or are they like really, really detrimental? Most of the time, if you're negative thinking, they're going to be really detrimental, and you just identify, hang on, I need to change, and I can change these thoughts.
Another way of looking at it is what would you say to a friend? Like,
Yeah.
would you say these thoughts to a friend? Is it something positive that you're saying? Are you being kind to yourself? Would you say this to a friend or not? I think that's something that I question a lot of the time with my own thoughts.
Follow that question with asking yourself how these thoughts behave and where are they going to lead you. Okay, where are they going to lead you? Are you just going to go down this spiral? Are you going to create this spiral which is going to lead you to things like avoidance or isolation? Are you going to just get back into your bed again and pull a duvet over your head? Or even worse, is it going to lead you to substance misuse? Which is what I used to do that quite a lot. Just have this chain of thoughts and reach out for the unhealthy substances and stuff. Or even worse, is it going to lead to sort of like self-harm and that kind of stuff? Will these thoughts lead to long-term rumination, which will eventually exhaust you? And as I said, you'll feel vulnerable, and you'll sort of like act on unhealthy behavior. So ask yourself how these thoughts behave and where they will lead you. Try to recognize this third point. Try to recognize thought distortions. Now, here at Isorropia, we talk a lot about thought distortions and recognizing thoughts distortions, especially like in the anxiety workshop and think confidence workshops and things like that.
Yeah.
So really, thought distortions are things like filter thinking. So these are filter thinking, or mental filters is only focusing on the negative. Okay, so 10 great things could have happened to you today, and one really bad thing happens to you, and you're focusing on that one thing. So it's only paying attention to certain types of evidence. Okay, so that's like negative filter thinking. Catastrophizing, that's the big one. We're all guilty of catastrophizing. So you're what is it? So you're kind of blowing things out of proportion. You see an event in the extreme, which is extremely highly negative kind of way. You overestimate the probability of the negative outcome and believe that you haven't got the coping skills to deal with it. A good example that I always use about this is that you get the brown paper envelope land on your door. You walk down your stairs or whatever, and you know it's from the benefits, and like before you know it, they're like, oh my god, benefit letter, they're going to take away my money. Oh my god, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I'm going to get kicked out of my house. And before you know it, you're back in your bedroom, just isolated against the world. Well, you open the letter up, and actually they're giving you more money. We catastrophize. It's a thought distortion.
I think it's important to try and, in a way, catastrophize the positive things that we're feeling and thinking. Sometimes I think it's really important to try and do that. I think if we're going to try and switch our mindsets and change the way that we're thinking, we need to start actually making those positive things much bigger in our heads and paying more attention to the positive than we do the negative.
Absolutely. Another thought distortion is personalization, personalizing things, so blaming yourself or taking responsibility for what wasn't completely your fault. It's saying to yourself, this is my fault. Okay, so we have a tendency to do that quite a lot. Our minds have a tendency to sort of get us believing things that aren't quite actually true about a situation. So these are all like thought distortions. All right, so we need to recognize when we're doing them. Again, when we recognize them, we can do something about them.
The awareness again, isn't it? It's going right back to that awareness.
You can challenge it. You can change. You can say. You can sit down and literally say, "Hang on a minute. No, I am overthinking this. I am catastrophizing this. This wasn't all my fault at all." You can look for evidence, other evidence, to kind of disprove your thinking. So the point 4: ask yourself, how you can work through these thoughts. Okay, so this is about kind of deconstructing your thoughts, and we've got lots of tools here at Isorropia, things like the thought diaries, the challenge sheets. You can literally write your thoughts down. Take some time and write your thoughts down. Whilst you're doing this, you're also distracting yourself from carrying on sort of negatively thinking. So, ask yourself, are these thoughts accurate? Look for the positive and realistic kind of alternative thoughts. Or perhaps just sit with your thoughts. Thoughts will pass. If you can sit with them, the intensity of the thought and the feeling will reduce. Understands that they are only thoughts, and you don't have to act on them. In time, they will subside. So they're going to reduce in intensity.
Overthinking can be so toxic, can't it? Like literally, it's the worst for me. I can just overthink a situation for days and days and days at a time, and just do my own head in. And then it comes to the day where I'm gonna actually action whatever it is that I'm really anxious about. And the whole day, it just actually goes really, really not half as bad as what I thought it was going to be.
Absolutely.
But I've just spent the past 3 days doing my own head in and going round and round in circles, catastrophizing everything, thinking it's going to be the worst case scenario, when actually it wasn't. And it's just the overthinking is massive, isn't it? Especially when you're really, really depressed, when you're really, really low.
We all do it. We all do it. Okay, number 5. So ask yourself what the cost is staying in this mindset. Okay, so really, think, hang on a minute, if I stay here, where's it going to lead me? Is it going to lead me to like lowering my self-esteem, anxiety? I'm going to have no change. I'm not changing anything for the positive. I'm just going to reinforce those feelings of inability and stuff like that. Number 6, try to identify 5 strengths or positive behaviors about yourself. This is going to start negating the negative feelings and start to build self-confidence and self-esteem. So perhaps you can think of 5 things that you're grateful for in your life. Most people can find 5 things that they're grateful for in their life, no matter how
100%.
negative they're thinking or what sort of state they're in. Knowing abilities and flip your thoughts. This is something that you do a lot, isn't it?
Do.
Flip the thoughts around.
It's really, really, it's powerful. I mean, I started doing it about 6 months ago, and it was I had this constant background noise of basically you're not good enough, you're not enough, you can't do that, you can't do this. What do you think you're doing? And just really negative self-talk all the time. And it got to the point about 6 months ago where I was like, do you know what? I'm so done hearing this. I'm just so over hearing this rubbish that I need to try and challenge this. I need to do something about it because it's making me feel awful. It's making me feel really, really low. And so literally just acknowledging that thought's come in for a start, instead of just having it there constantly playing. When the thought came in, I'd literally just flip it and go, no, you are enough. And you can do this. And then at the beginning, it felt like I was lying to myself. It's like, oh, I'm not just lying. You're not enough, really, blah, blah, blah. But actually, over a period of time, it actually started really sort of becoming a habit, and it became a little bit more easier to flip the thought. And it got to the point where I made a really big decision in my life, and it really actually, for the first time in my whole life, actually felt like I was enough for the first time. Really, really felt like I was enough. And that's because I actually challenged the thought and started feeling like I was. So it is possible to change the thoughts, to change how you feel, to change inevitably your behavior and your life. It's huge, it's massive. But if you're not aware at first that you can change those thoughts, you're in the dark, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So it's the awareness, which is why I keep saying that it is the most important part of it.
But challenging those thoughts initially, definitely. Okay, and number 7, identify and focus on something that you really enjoy or you're interested in. Okay, so focusing on interests act as a distraction and will allow your rational thinking to overweigh your irrational thinking, clearing your mind to focus on something that serves you. So this is something that I kind of started doing as I started feeling better, was really getting that negative thought in and thinking, right, hang on a minute, I'm going to go and do something I'm really interested in. Watch something about music or history or sport. Go and watch football. And just totally distract myself into something that I'm interested in. Going back to the courses and what a lot of the guys done. I know some of the guys, you know, when they were feeling in you know, kind of, you know, that place, in that negative place, negative thinking, they go and do some of their course. And it makes you feel so much better, you know, because they're interested in it. So there's a guide there that you guys can start using. Or there's 7 things, there's 7 questions. You don't have to go through that guide. Okay. If anything, just ask yourself if these thoughts are useful. Do they serve you? Ask how these thoughts behave and where they're going to lead you. And if all of that is like, you know, this isn't going to lead me well, you know, this isn't going to serve me at all, then try to flip your thoughts and onto something that you're really interested in. Okay, try to flip your thoughts onto something that you enjoy doing.
Changing your focus.
Even changing your focus, changing your attention into the things that you know are going to stimulate you healthily. You know, there's three of those points there. Okay, so you know, perhaps that's going to help you guys out a little bit. Right. Okay.
I think being kind to yourself is just massive. So I've said it before, I'm going to say it again because I do think it's really important. Talking to yourself like you would a friend, like I said before, it's a really good start to trying to flip those feelings and those thoughts. So being kind to yourself, talking to yourself like you would a friend, and also realizing that the most important relationship you're ever going to have is with yourself, and making your head a nice place to be. You know, it's you're in your head all the time, so trying to make that place a nice place for you to be is really, really massive, and it's really important to your mental health to really being aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming towards the end of the live now. We've got a few minutes left. I just want to just briefly allude to this last question, and it's what to do when we are looking after someone with depression. Okay, we very much focus about ourselves and the person, the individual. But you know, we've got to realise, and this gets forgotten about as well, depression really affects everyone around that individual. You know, it's not just the person with depression who's affected by their illness. People close to them are really, really impacted. So if you find yourself you're caring for someone with depression, or someone, you know, your partner's got depression, or brothers, sisters, mums and dads, you know, those relationships can become really, really kind of strained. But you may feel like a loss of what to do. Finding things like support groups and talking to other people going through similar situations might actually help. Okay. But I think the important thing to do is talk to that person and listen to that person. Listen to that person with compassion and empathy. You might not have to say anything. It's just listening and letting them get stuff out. It's very difficult to do at times, but it can really, really make those relationships a lot better. Ask questions. Ask what they need. You know, ask what they need, what their needs are.
What do you need right now? Yeah. Like, what do you need right now? Like, everyone's different, and everyone what needs comfort in different ways. Everyone has different love languages as well, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
So, in whether it's in a friendship or a relationship, everybody needs different things to feel safe and to feel okay. So, just asking them if you're not sure or how to help somebody that you're with, or you know, a family member or anybody or a friend, ask them just openly to say what is it that you feel like you need, like what is it, how can I help you to feel better, you know, what can we do to make this day a little bit less, you know, difficult, or this time less difficult for you. Asking them openly that question is something that could be really, really helpful for the relationship.
Absolutely talking, listen to them, encourage them to speak, encourage them to express their needs. All right.
And
I just
sorry,
go on.
Helping them to feel understood. I'm going to say it again because it's really important. It's helping them to feel understood by listening to them and being supportive, instead of you know, the sort of like cheer up or it's going to be okay kind of thing. You know, there's kind of, you know, it can be all right for a bit of banter, but I think generally when someone's really struggling with depression, just helping them to feel understood and listening to them and giving them that space to talk, and just kind of like just being there with them and just going, okay, look, what's going on, and just listening to them can be so powerful.
I just want to allude to the comments. I've just seen our Jazz has appeared. Hi Jazz, how are you doing? Right, so we're coming to the end. I just want to say a last word. If you feel, and it relates to kind of the support group and the talking and getting help that way, if you feel that you are feeling depressed and you don't know what to do, Isorropia is now self-referral. As you guys, some of you guys might know. Okay, So call us. You know, you can come and you can talk to us. You can be with people who understand. You can be with people who are kind of like-minded, going through similar sorts of things. Okay, it might well be the best thing you've ever done. I wish there was a service around like this when I was feeling poorly. It would have, you know, shrunk the period of time that my recovery took. Definitely. So with now self-referral, give us a call. Look at our website. Whatever you want to do, look at our website. Might be a great place to start. And just give us a call. You know, I mean, what have you got to lose? It could be the best move that you've ever made.
There's a really nice bit on there as well. So if there's all the wellbeing coaches have their own little sort of section, and you can click on our picture, and we've all got like a little bio about our own sort of like lived experience and things like that. So it might be really nice to sort of, if you're new to the service, to click on there and sort of meet us before actually meeting us in a way. So to sort of get a little bit of a gist about who we are.
Absolutely. So, you know, make that call. All right, guys. Well, that's the end of the live today. I really hope that it's helped, especially that guys. Remember, it's all about asking yourself questions.
Yeah.
All right. Definitely. And as Naomi's saying, look after yourself, self-care, talking. Okay, small little changes. All right. So really lovely to speak to some of you on the comments. And we'll see you here next time.
See you later.
Right? Bye.